This is a presentation basically that I gave at Penguicon 2014 about indeterminacy as a compositional tool. It's a way of adding a little bit of variety of sort of overclocking your brain using tarot cards and writing. I am James Frederick Leach, but of course if you're reading this on my blog, you probably already know that. I blog as James Frederick Leach right here, but I also write at a couple different other places. Daily Nightmare, where we celebrate Midwest snob horror, any intersection of those three things. I also write over at a place called 20 Minute Garden that is about urban simplicity. There are a lot of like techniques and tricks for, you know, living more simply when you get away from it all and you live out in the country. We try to explore techniques, tricks, the experience of living simply with neighbors. Basically, if you can't have goats, that's what we're talking about. Oh, and I also brew my own beer, and like many folks who brew their own beer, I constantly tinker with my system, and I've been trying to make it most ecologically and economically sensitive. So there's a little bit of play in the green home brewing. It's both green as in ecological and green as in greenback. So, but I'm going to talk here about indeterminacy as a compositional tool, tarot cards and writing. The big picture of this technique is using metaphor as a brain hack. That's how it fits with Penguicon. Penguicon is this great, annual party of, I don't know, weirdos, enthusiasts. We get together. These are folks who are writers, who are programmers, who are tinkers and makers and upstarts and rebels, and we just can't keep our fingers off monkeying with all sorts of stuff. It's a celebration of open source culture. And so this is a way of hacking your own brain to be more creative, to get yourself out of your writer's block, to keep things interesting for you to keep writing on it. A lot of new agey folks use the word energy, to describe things that honestly drive me insane because I've had enough, physics classes in college. You're not talking about energy. Hey, but you're maybe talking about metaphor. Metaphor is extremely potent. It's the way we get our handles on stuff around us. There's the way you frame a debate, the way you start, initially put it into language, that enables all sorts of the way development can continue on something, and it constrains it too. So metaphor is a primary category for me. That's like the interface structure of how we humans relate to absolutely everything. This is also, in a sense, overclocking your creativity by using sleight of mind. So you know about sleight of hand. That's like the what traditional illusionists do. They get your conscious mind looking in one place so they can do something else. Sleight of mind is sort of the same thing, except you're trying to distract part of your conscious mind so other parts of your mind can get down and get busy. That's all I'm doing here. So I stumbled upon tarot cards while I was researching totally something different. And if you don't get anything else out of this presentation, realize how wonderful research is. When you're working on a project and you're trying to come up with something, it's totally cool to follow a research path out. Once I discovered tarot cards, though, it was like, oh my gosh, this fits with so many things I'm interested in. They are extremely visual. They are encoded little bits of metaphor right there that don't use words. They are like a book with no binding. Each one of these little images tells a story, or at least part of a story, and if you put them in the right order, you can spur yourself to tell better stories and deeper stories. Now, everything I'm saying doesn't have to use tarot cards. I'm assuming you could use Magic the Gathering cards. I don't play that, so I don't have a deck of those. But those strike me as like very image-rich, narratively primed things that are easily shuffleable. You could use a deck of other kinds of images too. But what I found really handy about tarot cards is that they are just, they fit in your pocket. Darn it, that's handy. This is not fortune telling, so this isn't really focusing on any occult or divinatory aspects of tarot cards. Which, in a sense, actually, if you use cards in that way, you might. I'm sort of circumventing those traditional uses. Um, so it's not fortune telling unless you're trying to tell what's going to happen in your story. So what the heck are tarot cards? It's a deck of 78 cards, very similar to normal playing cards. In fact, I think that one of their origins is to play a game like it's a trump-taking game. Um, they're usually divided into two different kinds of card, the Major Arcana and the Minor Arcana. The Major Arcana is 22 cards. These are the... if you've ever seen a movie that had a tarot card in it, it probably was one of the Major Arcana. It's like the Death card and the Tower card and Love and... anyways, regardless, they're the greater trumps. They're the things that would take the hand if you were playing Tarocchi. There's also a Minor Arcana, which has 4 suits, similar but not identical to the ones we have in normal playing cards. The only difference is that there are 13 cards instead of in playing cards having 12. In traditional tarot, these are wands, cups, coins, and swords. Individual different kinds of decks will sometimes have, different innovations on that, trying to do whatever special slant the particular artist has. There are 3 general styles of iconography in tarot cards. There's the Marseille deck. These are very bold colors. They have that sort of like they can have that very graphic woodcut style. They have a traditional style of interpretation, like the Lovers has 3 human figures, and it's usually focuses on a choice. The Fool is sometimes, it's depicted slightly differently than in other. Some folks really love this, but what I find unusable about this style of deck for my purposes is that the minor trumps look like this. These are the different staves, and wow, that just doesn't give my creative side enough meat to chew on. I prefer something to have just a little bit more, narrative priming. Another style is the Rider-Waite-Coleman deck, commonly known as the Rider-Waite deck after the publisher and the guy who came up with the iconography. Coleman is the name of the person who actually drew the cards. These are frequently what you think of when you see tarot cards. These are some of the major trumps. They've got that sort of Art Nouveau loose style, and lots of cool details, both in the foreground and the background. There's like at least some kind of color. There's all sorts of things that my creative brain can look at and grab a hold of. And the most important part is that the minor trumps also have pictures. So the king has like that's a real king sitting on a real throne, and that middle card, the 3 of Swords. You can pick out all sorts of things. You can think about like 3 folks joining together like 3 musketeers with a common purpose in their heart, or it could just be a rainy day. Different kinds of things pick out for different reasons. There's another general style of iconography with tarot cards, and that's the Crowley Thoth deck. These are just gorgeous pictures too. Honestly, they seem a little too focused for me. There's just not enough detail, frankly. Just not enough stuff for me to pick out. They're gorgeous as pictures. They're just not good as material. Hey, your mileage may vary. These may rock your world. So even with the same iconography, different artists will pick out different themes and different parts of that iconography. These are all the same card, but 3 different decks, 3 different kinds of deck, and these are all in that sort of Rider-Waite-Coleman style. in all three of these are the Magician card. You got a central figure who's holding a staff or a magic wand. And then you've also got arrayed somewhere around them the other suits of the tarot. You've got the coin and the cup and the sword and the staff. But they take a whole different tack on what's going on. The middle deck is the Wizard's Tarot by Corinne Kenner. That's totally hot. She takes this whole metaphor of a wizard's school, and there's all sorts of detail everywhere here. My creative eye can see all sorts of stuff to work on. Similarly, the Deviant Moon Tarot, which is also totally rockin' as far as having very vivid, very evocative imagery, at least for me. Obviously with a whole different slant. If I was writing more dark fantasy stuff, I think I would totally go for the Deviant Moon Tarot. And the whole point is you can find a deck that you like, that works with you. And honestly, you may use different decks for different kinds of stuff. But I know if you're like me, you don't need another thing to collect. You've already got the t-shirt collection, the comic book collection, the books. You don't need another collection. Don't buy as many as you need. Buy as many as you need. Don't buy as many as you want. So then this was just an opportunity to folks in the audience to sort of like, hey, what's the first thing you notice about this deck? This card here. You might remember this is also the logo for a production company that makes a currently popular television show. You may realize it from the closing credits. Different days, I'm going to notice different stuff about this. Sometimes it's that big, vibrant banner, It's like a triumphal entry sort of banner kind of thing. Sometimes I'll notice that glowing, vivid sun, Sometimes I'll notice the joy of the writer on the card. Sometimes it's got to be some kind of a garden because it's got the sunflowers there. The point is that I'm not reading it as the traditional, what the sun card actually means in the divinatory tradition. Although if that works for you, that's cool too. I'm just noticing whatever I notice today out of this card. What's cool about that is that then I know that some part of me is ready to write about that. Some part of me wants to has noticed that because it's got something to say about that. It sort of combats the whole thing of like writing out a detailed outline and not finding that you have any words to say about any of the items on that outline. And then what I did was I went through a couple other different cards and had folks from the audience, say, hey, I noticed this and this. And I said, honestly, how many folks, when they see this card, think of Led Zeppelin? That's totally cool too. If that's your association, and honestly, if I have to explain that reference, you're too young. But that's a fair reference too. Maybe there's some kind of music. Maybe that's the music that's playing in one of the scenes you're writing. Obviously, this has a more placid background. Once again, a central figure. Blah blah. Anything you notice, you can work. This is the Queen of Pentacles. What I tend to do to open up the whole sort of iconography thing is that they have different face cards for tarot than for traditional playing cards. There's a king, the queen, the knight, and depending on the deck, the page. Sometimes it's the princess, sometimes it's other things. For the king, I tend to view that as someone who is in complete control of this particular sphere. So if it was the king of coins, it would be someone who's like a master of money. That's just like totally what they do. There's no sense of struggle. It's fully within their command and control. For the queens, I tend to view them more as instructors, folks who are, obviously very competent in this particular sphere, but they are also very openly directed. They're folks who are trying to share this wisdom, this knowledge, this know-how with other folks. The knights tend to be folks who are excited and who are motivated to try out the principles of whatever realm that is. I mean, so if the kings are like science, the knights are more like engineering. They're like research and development. They're like, hey, I want to try this. It's like someone going out. Something like the Knight of Pentacles is more like, hey, I'm making my first investment. I'm that kind of thing. And then the pages are, I view them more like as students, as folks who are learning the principles of any given endeavor, any given sorts of thing. So I use that as a general structure to prime my imagination. But honestly, sometimes when I look at, like, let's say this Queen of Pentacles card, I'm most interested in that blue mountain back in the background. Like, wow, that's where I'm going. Maybe maybe I start in a garden and I want to end up at that blue mountain in the background. However it's working for you, do it. It's another card, all sorts of different ways of reading it. One thing it took me a long time to notice was that among these spilled cards, the spilled cups in the front there, 2 of them have something red in them, possibly wine. One of them has something green, blue, sort of. Is it poisoned? So what is the reaction of this figure here? You can project anything you want. Is it someone like, oh, he's crying over spilled milk? Or is he thinking like, oh my God, someone was trying to poison me? Or like, wow, I have discovered where the poison was, See where they are. They seem to be outside of a town, across a bridge maybe. Maybe that's working for you. So the first use of tarot cards as a brain hack is for raw inspiration. Pick a card, any card. In fact, pick 3. So honestly, you'll have to trust me on this. I shuffled a deck and I pulled out 3 cards, and these were the 3 cards I pulled out. And at this point in the presentation, I sort of let folks notice stuff about these cards. What are the things they noticed? And so in the first card, I focused a little bit about, hey, so what is this dude, handing out? Is it coins? Because it could be coins. It could also be, for some reason, I got magic beans. So, and I don't know why, but it's someone handing out magic beans. He's holding a scale. So is he handing out salary? Is he paying someone? Hey, the other thought is this card about giving, or is it mostly about receiving? About the folks, in yellow or in blue? All sorts of intriguing stuff like that. The center card, is it about rest and repose? Is it about death? Is it about 3 swords getting ready to do something? And the card on the far right, I'm glad that showed up because there's traditionally folks who are afraid of certain kinds of cards. That like, oh no, there are certain bad cards, and boy howdy, that would be a bad card in most people's minds. The devil tends to be, I don't know, considered evil. If you look at the card for a while, you'll notice that there are 2 servants who are enthralled to this central demon, but the chains around their neck are pretty loose. If they wanted to, they could take those chains off. One could presume. So this could be bad habits. This could be things one thinks about. Or it could be big, powerful, scary figures. It could be like, I don't know, abusive father kind of thing. There's all sorts of stuff you can pull out of this. And if you know the iconography of this general deck, you'll know that this is actually, it echoes a lot of the same imagery as the Lover card. But instead of an angel blessing folks, it's a different figure, let's just say. So what I did is I wanted folks to look at these 3 cards, have them percolate in the back of their mind, and then we talked about them later. I also tried this as a chance for plot elaboration. It's 2 great tricks that go great together is what I was calling it. And the whole hero's journey thing. That honestly, I don't that's not my natural mode of understanding how to write a big, long, plotted work. Which is an amazing thing, actually. When you first sit down to try to write a novel, it's like building a big ship inside your brain. It's a hard thing to do, and to try to convince yourself that, hey, there's enough space in my brain to write a whole narrative that all fits together. So one of the ways you can trick it into doing this is this hero's journey thing. And if you followed, I know the Star Wars George Lucas thing, it's all the rage. Everybody loves this thing. And there are different ways of talking about these 12 steps. So here's one description of them. Here's yet another. Hey, Google hero's journey, and you will have more reading matter than you can stand. So what I did is, for each one of those stages, and what happened at this point is I had already written 50,000 words of an NaNoWriMo novel, right? And I had this big chunk of verbiage, and like, hey, that's really, really interesting, and I was totally impressed that I got that much out. But then again, I wasn't really convinced that it had a overall structure, an overall narrative shape. I mean, I knew the events and that kind of thing, and then maybe it sort of fit in this thing here, but I was sort of stumped, and I didn't really know how I could deepen it. So what I tried doing is I tried pulling a card for each one of those 12 things. And that is actually the sheet of paper I did this on. I came across that the other day. And it was intriguing to me to try to figure out, well, okay, how is that, look about 1 o'clock there. How is the call to adventure something like the star card? And I thought about that and let my brain chew on it a little bit, and then I tried to pull this out more, and it tricked me into writing more. It tricked me into elaborating that scene, that event, a little bit bigger. And actually, that happened all the way around, and I was able to discover certain kind of through lines that, yeah, sure, maybe were implicit originally in my story, but it was really fun to have a way of coaxing them out of my subconscious, untoward to the way I was doing it. So then in the seminar, what I did is I said, hey, let's go back and actually write for 5 minutes on this. What I do when I've presented, like, for creative writing classes, I will often do a shtick of toss out a name, or toss out a noun, and then I'll do a Google search for images to pick out a picture with that thing. And then I'll say a setting, and then I'll say I think maybe in a mood, and I'll give folks a half hour to write. I say 100 words about these 3 things. Tell the story involving these 3 images. Now, the only trouble with that, and I love this. It's a great prompt. We always get really, really cool creative stuff coming out, and of course, everybody comes up with radically different things based on those 3 images. The trouble is that if I'm trying to do it for myself in my own little writing studio, I really can't trick myself into like that improvisational thing. That's what's so cool about having a shuffleable deck that I can just pull out 3 cards and, prompt myself. So that's what I did here. And in the presentation, we came up with, and I said, look, just let your imagination go. We don't have to share anything. And to be honest, we only had 5 minutes, so everybody had come up with really good ideas for a story, for a short story, or for something maybe even bigger. And then I allowed folks the possibility to, do you want to share it with us? And folks came up with some really great ideas. And there are ideas, so I'm not going to share them with you because they were their ideas. For some reason, the thing I came up with me was somebody who buys a franchise from a traveling salesman, and he never discovers what it is. Until he dies, he discovers he's got the fast food franchise in hell. And then I was thinking, like, well, what about making fast food for folks who have all eternity, and who don't really expect really very good food because it's hell. I don't know if I'm going to write that, but hey, that sounded like kind of an amusing story I could do. Research, we don't need no stinking research, unless that helps. And like I was saying before, If you want to read more about the traditional iconography that's used in a deck, that's totally cool. There is no end of tarot books. Um, if you're particularly interested in the strategies I've talked about here, this is a totally cool book. If you don't have any other tarot, honestly, if you have no interest in the divinatory, occult, esoteric sort of things about tarot, this is a cool book to have because it's got, you know, 78 pages talking about the imagery on each different card and different ways you can use that as a writer. It also has some really cool tricks and techniques to get yourself out of certain um, out of troubles, certain kinds of writing troubles by using tarot cards, different kinds of spreads. Um, uh, she's actually the same person who did the Wizard's Tarot, which is, yeah, if you're doing high fantasy stuff, you got, or especially, oh my gosh, if you like the Harry Potter things, I think you might really dig that deck. Um, where can you get tarot cards? These were all references for folks in the Michigan area, and these are just, and there are probably scads more. These are just places that I know sell tarot cards and also allow you to have demonstration decks, so you can actually look through and see, hey, are these images doing it for me? Because there are hundreds of different kinds of tarot decks, and some of them, boy, do not work for me. They're just like not what I'm interested in. And I don't want to name them because, hey, maybe they work for you. That rocks. Um, uh, and I think that's about it. Since I'm doing this, and if this recording works, it will be up on JamesFrederickLeach.com within mere minutes from now. If not, hey, this has been fun.